My wife demanded a divorce after 13 years. I quietly signed the papers. As she celebrated with her lover at our favorite restaurant, I approached their table with a smile. She smirked. You finally learned to let go. I chuckled. Actually, I just bought this place. Enjoy your last meal here. Her lover's face turned pale, and she gasped. What? Then the waiter walked over with an envelope. I never thought my marriage would end like this. You always hear about people falling out of love, drifting apart, getting bored with each other. But I didn't see it coming. Not like this. Not with the woman I had spent 13 years of my life with. My name's Russell Carter, and for the longest time, I thought I had it all figured out. I was never the flashy type, never cared about the big house or the expensive cars. I built a good life through hard work, running my own construction company in Charleston, South Carolina. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was steady, and I was proud of it. I had a comfortable home, a beautiful wife, and a routine that made sense. And I thought Sophie was happy too. She was my best friend once. Or at least, I thought she was. We had met in our late 20s, fallen in love fast, and built a life together. She was warm, funny, and had a way of making me believe that no matter how hard things got, we'd always have each other. That's why it blindsided me when she sat me down one evening and said, I want a divorce. Just like that. No build-up. No warning signs, at least none that I saw. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the same one we had eaten countless meals at, talking about our days, our plans, our future. The same table where we laughed over spilled wine and cried over bad days. I looked up from my plate, a forkful of roasted chicken halfway to my mouth. What? She sighed. Rubbing her temples like this was something exhausting for her. I can't do this anymore. I put the fork down. My stomach felt like it had just turned to stone. Can't do what? She glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. Us. I haven't been happy for a long time, Russell. I stared at her, my mind racing, trying to recall any signs. Any moments that should have warned me this was coming. I swallowed hard. I thought we were okay. If you're unhappy, we can fix it. Go to therapy, talk. She shook her head. No, I've made up my mind. And that was when it hit me. The way she refused to look me in the eye, the way she had already rehearsed this conversation in her head. This wasn't sudden. She had been planning this. I exhaled slowly. There's someone else, isn't there? Her lips parted for a split second, just a flicker of hesitation, but that was all I needed. There was. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the woman I had spent over a decade building a life with. The woman I had trusted more than anyone. I should have yelled. Should have demanded answers. Should have asked why. But instead, I just nodded. And then I got up, went to the drawer, and pulled out the bottle of whiskey I kept for rough days. I poured myself a glass, sat back down, and took a slow sip. All right. She frowned. All right. I met her eyes. You want a divorce? You got it. For a second, I thought I saw something like disappointment flicker across her face. Maybe she wanted to fight. Maybe she wanted me to break down, to scream, to beg. But I wouldn't give her that. Instead, I quietly signed the papers when she handed them to me. And just like that, 13 years were over. Sophie moved out within the week. She had already rented an apartment across town, which told me exactly how long she had been planning this. 2 weeks later, I found out the rest of the story. I was grabbing coffee at a little shop near my office when I ran into Jared, an old college friend. We hadn't seen each other in a while, but we followed each other on social media, so he already knew about the divorce. Man, I'm sorry to hear about you and Sophie, he said, shaking his head. I gave him a tight-lipped smile. Yeah, well, it is what it is. He hesitated, then glanced around like he was debating whether or not to say something. Look, I don't know if you know, but she's been seeing someone. For a while now. I tensed. Who? He hesitated again, then sighed. Derek. I felt my whole body go still. Derek Foster. One of my closest friends. A guy I'd known for nearly 15 years. A guy I had trusted enough to invite into my home, to share meals with, to sit across from me at my own goddamn dinner table, while he was screwing my wife behind my back. My jaw clenched so hard I thought I might crack a tooth. How long? Jared winced. Over a year. A year. Sophie hadn't just left me. She had been living a lie for an entire goddamn year, sleeping beside me while sneaking off to be with my so-called friend. I didn't say much else to Jared. Just thanked him, paid for my coffee, and walked out into the street, my heart pounding in my chest. But it wasn't rage. No, it was something colder. Sharper. I had always been a patient man. I knew how to play the long game. And I was about to make them regret every goddamn second of it. A few days later, I got a call from Marco, the owner of La Bella Vita, the Italian restaurant Sophie and I had always loved. It was our place, where we had anniversary dinners, lazy Sunday brunches, date nights when we actually made the effort. He sounded hesitant. Russell, I hate to tell you this, but Sophie and Derek have been coming here. A lot. I gripped my phone tighter. That right? Yeah. And it doesn't feel right, man. I just thought you should know. That was when the idea hit me. Marco had been talking about retiring for a while. Said he wanted to sell the place, but didn't know if he could find the right buyer. I had the money. I had the time. And, more than anything, I had a reason. So, I made Marco an offer. And just like that, I became the owner of La Bella Vita. And I waited. The first time I saw them sitting at our old table, laughing, drinking wine, looking so damn comfortable in the life they had stolen from me, I knew the moment had come. I walked over, calm and collected. Sophie spotted me first. She smirked, twirling the stem of her wine glass between her fingers. You finally learned to let go. I chuckled. Actually, I just bought this place. I gestured to the table. Enjoy your last meal here. Derek's face turned pale. Sophie's smirk dropped. What? The waiter walked over with an envelope, setting it down in front of them. Derek swallowed hard. What is this? I smiled. Just some new policies. Effective immediately, we don't serve CHATers here. Sophie's face turned red. You can't do that. I met her eyes, my voice steady. Actually, I can. And for the first time in a long time, I felt good. Sophie's smirk disappeared completely. She blinked at me like she hadn't quite heard what I said. You're joking. I leaned on the back of an empty chair, my voice calm and even. Not at all. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing around. Other diners had started to notice. A few were whispering, some watching outright, forks halfway to their mouths. He cleared his throat. Look, Russell, let's not make a scene. I chuckled, shaking my head. Oh, I'm not the one making a scene. I'm just enforcing a new house rule. Sophie scoffed, pushing her wine glass away. This is ridiculous. I didn't say anything. Just stood there, letting the silence stretch between us. Then Marco, who was still helping with the transition while I finalized the takeover, walked up. He placed a firm hand on my shoulder, looked at Sophie, then at Derek, and said in his thick Italian accent, he's the owner now. His restaurant, his rules. Derek's jaw clenched. His eyes darted around the room again, and I knew what he saw. People staring, watching them, judging them. He always cared about appearances, about reputation. Sophie opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but then she saw the look in my eyes. She knew she had lost. Derek muttered a curse under his breath and threw his napkin onto the table. We're leaving. Sophie hesitated. For just a second, I thought she might stay, might say something, try to justify, try to twist the knife just one more time. But in the end, she stood too. As they walked toward the exit, I called out, "Oh, and Sophie?" She stopped, turning halfway, her lips pressed into a thin line. I smiled. You left a lot more than just me behind. She didn't respond, just turned and walked out with Derek, her head high, but her shoulders stiff. And just like that, they were gone. Word spread fast. Charleston isn't a small town, but it sure as HLL acts like one. People talk. And this was prime gossip. By the next day, I was getting texts from friends, former mutual acquaintances, even old co-workers of Sophie's. Some were checking in on me. Others, they just wanted the details. The story had taken on a life of its own. Apparently, someone at the restaurant had recorded part of the interaction and put it on social media. It wasn't a full video, but the caption said it all. Man catches his ex-wife and ex-best friend chit-chatting, buys the restaurant they frequent, and bans them. It got shared everywhere. By the end of the week, it had thousands of likes and comments. People ate that SHD up. Sophie and Derek? They weren't thrilled. Sophie tried to play the victim, telling anyone who would listen that I was being petty and vindictive, that I was trying to control her even after the divorce. But no one was buying it, because the truth was out. And Charleston? Charleston has a long memory. Sophie and Derek might have left the restaurant that night with their heads high, but their world was already starting to crack. For the first few weeks, they tried to act like nothing had changed. They still went out together, still posted pictures of their perfect relationship on social media, still clung to the idea that they had won. But the thing about karma? It doesn't always hit fast. Sometimes it's slow, patient, a gradual unraveling. And that's exactly what happened. I started hearing things through the grapevine. At first, little stuff. Derek's business, he was a real estate agent, started taking a hit. Turns out, clients don't like working with a guy who's got a reputation for screwing over his best friend. The video of them getting kicked out of La Bella Vita had made its rounds, and people talked. Some of his high-profile clients dropped him. New ones were hesitant. He tried to shake it off, but Charleston doesn't forget. Then there was Sophie. She had been so sure that leaving me was going to be a fresh start, that she was stepping into something better. But people weren't as supportive as she thought they'd be. Friends who used to invite her to brunch stopped returning her calls. She wasn't getting the warm welcome she expected at social events. And then came the real hit. A few months after the divorce, I got a call from Catherine, Sophie's old boss. Russell, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but she hesitated, then sighed. Sophie came to me asking for her old job back. I almost dropped my phone. Sophie had left her job at Caldwell and Associates, a marketing firm, before the divorce. She had quit a few months before everything blew up, probably thinking Derek would take care of her. Probably assuming she'd never have to work a regular job again. I let out a slow breath. And Catherine hesitated again. Then she said, I told her no. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not out of cruelty. Just satisfaction. Catherine chuckled too. It wasn't personal. Well, maybe a little. But the real reason? The partners didn't want the drama. Her reputation took a hit after everything that happened. That was putting it mildly. Sophie had always thought she was the kind of woman who could land on her feet no matter what. That people would always take her side. But the thing about cheating and betrayal? It stains you. She had burned too many bridges. And now? Now she had to live with it. A few months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Sophie and Derek were fighting. A lot. The whispers said she wasn't happy, that she was struggling with money, that the excitement of their affair had faded, and all that was left was real life. Derek, as it turned out, wasn't the perfect partner she had built him up to be. He was self-centered, short-tempered, and, worst of all, boring when there was no secret to keep. And then, the cherry on top. One evening, Marco texted me. Just a simple message. Guess who I saw arguing in the parking lot outside La Bella Vita? I didn't even have to guess. Sophie and Derek had shown up again, trying to get a table. They hadn't even made it inside. The hostess, one of Marco's nieces, had turned them away at the door. And apparently, that had set Sophie off. She had snapped at Derek, and from what Marco said, it had escalated. There had been yelling, accusations, Sophie storming off, Derek standing there, looking like an idiot. It was poetic. The restaurant they had once used as their little victory lap had become the place where their relationship started to crack. And me? I was happier than I had been in years. Owning La Bella Vita had been one of the best decisions I had ever made. I kept my construction business going, but I also fell in love with running the restaurant. I hired good people, made some updates, and turned it into something even better than it had been before. And as for my personal life, well, one evening, I was closing up the restaurant when a woman walked in. Her name was Natalie. She had been one of our regulars when Marco owned the place, but I hadn't really noticed her before. She was smart, kind, and had a smile that could make a bad day disappear. We started talking, then dating, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something real. Not rushed, not built on lies, just real. As for Sophie and Derek, last I heard, they didn't last. Sophie moved into a smaller apartment, and Derek? Well, he was still trying to fix his reputation. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had let go, and I had won.